Okay, please take a seat, ladies and gentlemen. We will start the conversation. I think we're still missing a speaker though.
Раз. Да.
Okay, welcome back everyone. I hope you had a nice time with your cup of coffee and some networking, and that you're back with us with a reinvigorated brain and join us in thinking together about the future aircraft construction and aircraft repairs in Ukraine. So actually I think this is the most interesting panel that we're having right now. Ukraine obviously has a very proud history in aircraft construction, but also in aircraft repair, of course. But admittedly, today, the capabilities in Ukraine and the industrial complex are perhaps arguably outdated. And of course, this affects Ukraine's air superiority in the conflicts that it has to deal with. So this conversation is about fixing this. How can we make sure that Ukraine is a player in this field, a strong player? There are, of course, several options that Ukraine has to restore and enhance its air superiority. Does Ukraine have to build its own airplanes? Does Ukraine have to establish supply chains and import parts? Does Ukraine have to buy new airplanes? These are questions that we want to address. But what are the challenges? What are the opportunities in this regard? And also, perhaps interesting question for the panel is, how can Ukraine cooperate with international partners, for instance, partners at NATO or in the United States or Europe, not only from the military sector, but also from the private sector. This is, of course, this has to go hand in hand, I would say. So we have actually an impressive panel today to answer those questions. I'm very humbled to present to you Serhiy Drozdov, the commander of the Ukrainian Air Forces. Thank you for being with us, sir. Jan Slivka, the Lieutenant General and First Deputy Commander of the Polish Armed Forces. Thank you as well to you for being with us. Serhiy Fil, Chief Designer for Perspective Design at Antonov State Enterprise. Thank you, sir. Dmitro Matronchik, Director of the Lviv State Aircraft Repair Plant. And last but not least, I hope I get your name correctly, Svistulya Serhiy, Chief Engineer at the Motorlutsk repair plants, also in Ukraine. So we basically have the military, the customer on the panel, and the people that can produce what the military needs. So perhaps let's get started. I would simply ask everyone to be concrete with your comments, short. I want this to be an interactive exercise also with the audience. There will be time for your questions and comments. So, Commander Drozdov, so how, in your opinion, are the main challenges for Ukraine, and how can we address these challenges? Thank you very much.
Ну, и я хотел бы, в принципе, для того, чтобы все меня понимали, перейти на нашу украинскую.
That everybody understands me, I will speak our native Ukrainian language so that it would be clear for the audience. First of all, about the challenges and threats. Since year 14, we are continuing a conflict and opposition to the aggressive force in the east, and one of the main threats was the use of air force in this conflict. We all know the agreements of Minsk, and one of the paragraphs of those Minsk agreements was banishment of air force in combat. Those Minsk agreements state that the role and the mission of the Air Force is very high, it is critical. As for the topic of our panel, what exactly can be done? Now we are on our way to reconstruction, to protection, to the NATO. So the NATO standards are applicable for Ukraine. They are attractive for Ukraine. We would like to enter NATO. We have a great potential. We have inherited a huge, vast number of training planes, combat planes, and transport planes. Actually, we have an ability to use all that vehicles. Our planes and helicopters are involved into cooperative exercises with NATO countries in Europe. Actually, in Odessa, the international exercise Sea Breeze has been completed recently. Along with the Navy, the Air Force has been participating in it, carrying out its combat missions. And Air Force always had a big role and a big loading. During the previous panel, the unmanned vehicles were reviewed. Actually, we should understand that both piloted and unmanned vehicles have their own segments. The role of unmanned vehicles is increasing. However, piloted vehicles, jet fighters, transporters, helicopters, it should participate and assist our colleagues on the land, on the ground, that are carrying out the main function in any close combat, in any warfare activities, both in Ukraine and abroad. And I'm sure that the role and the mission of Air Force and the potential of Ukraine is great. I would like to add that based on Antonov's ideas, the A400 plane is already effective. It's the achievement of our state manufacturing facility that they managed to build up such a plane. We are continuing our cooperation, and we are expecting new planes Ant 178. Moreover, for example, the USA, the Polish army are using planes that are rather outdated. For example, F-16 or F-15. During the open sky exercise that has been conducted in Ukraine, we have seen the F-15 jets. But they were updated and equipped with new technological decisions, so there are still options to use them for some time. We also have some plans. You know our attitude for the aircrafts. We are reviewing not only adoption of new planes, but also the use of our old planes, because we always have an option for modernization and use of the existing planes like Su-27, Su-24, Mi-8 helicopter, Mi-24 helicopter, and their modified versions. I guess that I have already provided the first answer. If you have any more questions, please ask.
Thank Thank you very much for this. Perhaps a quick follow-up question, Commander, because you were mentioning that Ukraine wants to join NATO. This is indeed a political decision, but you know, if you look at the Ukrainian Air Force, what would need to happen, let's say, the coming 3 to 4 years to make sure that the Ukrainian Air Force meets NATO standards? What are the priorities here?
Скажімо,
Well, as you have said, this is rather a political issue because entering NATO is a political system issue. It should be agreed with all branches of power. As for the Air Force, now we are running the cooperative exercise, the open sky exercise. For example, along with Poland or Romania, we have invited the British Eurofighters who are supporting the USA jets in their flights over Ukraine. These all are elements of cooperation and interaction of the participant pilots. First of all, we are foreseeing not only the interaction of people, but exchange of data. We have arranged the exchange of data with Turkey, Hungary. Now we are going to get the data about the sky situation. We're going to exchange data with Poland. This is local data that helps to control and assist any aircrafts that are in the sky. Due to these steps, we are going to arrange the automatic control system. What else needs to be done? We have, sort of different systems of interactions. If the NATO countries are using the closed line, we are using a different system. When we feel as a member of NATO, then of course we will adopt those information devices and structures. We will continue our cooperation and interest.
Thank you very much for your insights, much appreciated. Let's next move to Lieutenant General Slivka. Poland is a NATO member, of course, and actually the Polish case is very interesting because you in Poland have now decisively chosen to buy new jet fighters to replace the fleet. So perhaps you have lessons learned for Ukraine from Poland.
You're absolutely right, sir. We have a good experience with implementing the fourth generation aircraft among the second generation. I have some experience, almost 40 years in service. Most of the time, almost 20 years, I was flying the second generation fighter, MiG-21s. So, and was, of course, responsible Polish Air Force for the implementing the new generation fighter, fourth generation fighter, F-16 that time. And of course, I thank you very much for the possibility to participate in this great forum and discussion. And of course, I would like to share with some experience, the implementing the fourth generation fighter in the Polish Air Force, and of course, keeping flying the second generation, like we still fly, as mentioned, like General Drozdov with the Sukhoi 22 fighter, MiG